Hi guys! I'm here with another book review for another very disappointing book, unfortunately, and that book would be The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica. This was a book I was really looking forward to, and unfortunately it just fell really flat. I gave this 1 star. If I could chuck it out the window, I probably would, I'm gonna be completely honest, because this book sucked. This takes place during a climate catastrophe, and we follow a main character who is part of the Sacred Sisterhood, a cloistered convent that is supposed to be a safe space among this insanity and catastrophe. Now, I was really looking forward to this because cult nuns are something that I think sounded really interesting. I've heard a lot of good things about this author. She is the same author as Tender is the Flesh, which my friend actually read and really enjoyed. She said it was very disturbing but interesting. So obviously when I saw this, I really wanted to pick it up. I found it a bit more interesting than Tender is the Flesh, even though Tender is the Flesh was also on my TBR. Anyway, I decided to pick this up because I'd heard nothing but good things about it. I heard a lot of really positive reviews from people that have similar reading tastes, that do review kind of more gothic and dark books. So I went in with pretty high hopes. Now, I do have some notes because I was really disappointed in this book and I wanted to have all my thoughts just written down so I wouldn't forget anything. So let's get started. Now, obviously, this book is supposed to be weird. That's kind of the whole point. So the fact that it's a strange book was not exactly off-putting or surprising, but it's a strange book in not a good way. I'll kind of get into that later. It's just the way the author tackles things is very bad. And yeah, on top of that, we're gonna go into pacing. Pacing is incredibly erratic, but I think that is part of the overall story because this is told in the form of forbidden diary entries by one of the cloistered sisters. So it makes sense that everything is kind of going too fast or too slow. After all, we're not even supposed to know this story. So I will excuse the erratic pacing as part of the actual story itself and is necessary to the plot, but that doesn't make reading it any more enjoyable and probably adds to how bad the book overall is because it's incredibly short and erratic. A lot of times when I talk about this book, you'll hear me say that I think that the author is trying really hard to be edgy. I don't dive too much into my thoughts about that, but I thought I would explain myself a bit better. What I mean by that is that the author is trying really hard to be complex, and I'm not going to try to be anti-intellectual and say that this book is not complex. There are some complexities, but the problem is that the author is staying very surface level. She refuses to go any deeper into these problems, so everything is very flat. It's not groundbreaking or anything we don't really know. It's actually quite common in dystopian books, and I will do spoilers a bit later on so we can talk about it a little more in depth. But basically, it's just all for shock value. All of the darker aspects of the book felt just like the author trying to be edgy and complex without actually wanting to touch the complexity and the darkness and delve deeper into it to make the story like substantial. And the fact that the story itself is not very substantial sucks because the author has a very nice writing style. Like, I do actually enjoy the author's writing style. There's a lot of really good quotes in this book and the writing can be very gripping at times, but the story overall falls flat and no amount of really nice quotable passages is going to save a bad book in my opinion. So that was kind of a problem because I found myself saying, wow, that's a really nice quote, or I really enjoyed that passage, but I'm still feeling really put off by the story and how it's being told and the pacing and everything else that I've mentioned that's wrong with it. It kind of just feels like I'm being told a bunch of random stuff. And on the note of telling, it feels like the author is telling you a lot of things even though they're very obvious, but the author does not give you a chance as the reader to make your own decisions or read between the lines, use your critical thinking skills. No, the author is telling you everything. It's very annoying. You know, you hear all the time, show, don't tell. I want to be shown things. You're showing them to me. Let me make my own conclusions. And now this is where I'm going to put the spoiler warning because I do want to talk about the big twist of the book and why I think the author is trying to be edgy and complex without actually doing it. So, spoiler warning, if you want to read The Unworthy and you're watching this review, go. If you hate spoilers, you gotta go, okay? The big twist. Now, if you're a fan of dystopia, or if you read about cults, or if you're just someone who exists, you might be pretty privy to what happens to women in these types of situations, especially in cults where the main leader, the cult leader, is a man. I'm going to give you a second to mull that over. Okay. The big twist for this book is obviously that our delusional sister here learns that their cult leader is raping and mutilating the enlightened sisters of their order. Yeah, that's not a big twist, first of all. That's the reality of being a woman, and I'm not going to dive into how common that is. And I was not shocked that this was happening. In fact, I kind of guessed it from the very beginning when they introduced their male cult leader. I kind of figured that was going to happen. Now, the author puts it on page, puts it on screen, and that's very unnecessary. I think when you do put rape on page, you need to be very, very purposeful in the way you're doing it. And again, it just felt like it was for shock value. Every dark aspect of this book feels like it's purely to shock you as the reader and is not actually integral to the story. We've got mutilation happening, you know, eyes being gouged out, eardrums being ruptured, so now the woman is deaf. We've got tongues being taken out, and then we have the enlightened being raped and used as like baby machines, and when they're pregnant they get killed off, and you're told that some kind of like mighty ritual, whatever. It's all for shock value. And that's my biggest pet peeve with this book, is that the author is trying to be shocking and complex, but in fact is making some kind of weird gore porn situation that's incredibly off-putting and unnecessary. I think we see enough atrocities and horrors that we don't need this on the page like that. And overall, that's why the book left a bad taste in my mouth. I'm really eager to get rid of this book. I'm very disappointed in the author, and I definitely won't be reading any more by this author again, because I have a bad feeling that it's probably going to be very similar to this. I don't know if this is maybe because it's in translation. I believe the book is originally in Spanish, so maybe some things do get lost in translation, but I don't know, since I only read it in English. But just the overall tone made everything just shock value. It didn't feel integral to the story, and even if it is, there are ways to approach certain things that will have them be better executed, and I think the author wasn't able to do that, unfortunately. And so I'm giving this book 1 star. It's really, really disappointing. I don't think I'll be reading anything from this author again. If you feel similarly, I would like to know. If you did enjoy the book, I'd like to know too. I'm just a person. My opinion is simply my own. Take my opinion with a grain of salt. That's just my qualms with the book. So yeah. Hopefully the next time I do a book review, it'll be for a good book instead of a bad one.